wrote, when the day of Pentecost came, all of the believers were in one place.
If we don't stand up for what's right, who
had
will?
many feasts and festivals that they used to commemorate seasons and important events that happened in the life of their nation.
You know, between Wakanda
One of the
and
most
Krakoa,
important festivals they ever celebrated was the Passover. And then 50 days after the Passover, they celebrated another festival called the Feast of Weeks,
I miss
or the
you
Feast
too.
of Harvest, which got a new name, the Feast of Pentecost, which means 50, penta, like Pentagon. 1,500 years before Christ's ministry came to earth. The people of God was in Egyptian slavery for 400 years. For 400 years, they cried out to God for deliverance. And near the end of that 400 years, God started speaking to the answer. They're crying out for deliverance. God is talking to the answer. They're crying out for deliverance. God is talking to the answer. They're crying out for help. God is talking to the answer. Because not just because God's not talking, that doesn't mean he's not working on your answer. You say, I feel like God is not hearing me right now. No, maybe he's working on your answer. So they're crying out for deliverance. God is speaking to the answer. And the answer comes in the form of a man named Moses. God calls a man named Moses, sends him down to Egypt to lead over 2 million people free. Through Moses, God overthrows the nation of Egypt with 10 mighty plagues. The last one was the death of every firstborn child. Moses tells everybody in the city that night, kill a lamb, take the blood, put it over your door. And when the death angel walks through the street, he will see the blood on the door. And the death angel will pass over your house. The people then are delivered from Egypt. The firstborn of Egypt died. They come out of Egypt, and then they're led to a place called Sinai. 50 days after they're led to Sinai, Moses is on top of a mountain. He comes down with the moral law, the 10 Commandments. 50 days after the Passover. After those 50 days, when that 50 days has come, that was a celebration of God's provision. His goodness, his kindness. They celebrated with a gift, an offering unto God. 50 days after the Passover. This is the symbolism in Pentecost.
Needed that boost.
It's symbolic of God's goodness,
I never stayed.
his
Sorry,
favor,
soldier.
his mercy, his giving, his generosity. And Passover was celebrated for over 1,000 years. It was only a foreshadow of the death of Christ, the ultimate Lamb. During the week of Passover around the year AD 33, the ultimate Lamb was killed on a cross. That was the final Passover in history. Then 50 days later, on another Sunday, comes the final Pentecost of history. This day right here, Pentecost Sunday, the final Passover, the final Pentecost. The verse says on this Sunday in Pentecost, all of the believers were together. You remember it was 120 of them in an upper room, and they had been in there for days praying and seeking God's face. Man, while they was in that upper room praying, that was enough time for them to descend into discord. They were praying. That was enough time for them to descend into other things, but they were praying. That was enough time for them to get weary. They were praying. That was enough time for them to be frustrated, but they were praying. That was enough time for them to have doubt and unbelief about what Jesus said. Go and wait. But they were praying. They were in that room praying, going through the scriptures because they believe what Jesus has said.
Nice job,
The
guys.
final commandments: make disciples, be my witness, go into the city, wait until you're endued with power from on high. So there they are on the day of Pentecost, 100 and... There came from heaven a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. I want to draw your attention to this fact. Suddenly, they said as they were in there praying, something happened unexpectedly. They heard a sound. feel the Spirit of God. They're in there praying, and out
Dude,
of
he
nowhere,
does
10
that
days
shit.
later,
Dude's
they
ass.
hear a sound like a mighty rushing wind. I want to draw your attention to the word mighty. Man,
Yeah,
it
he's
will
terrible,
probably
man.
sound like, if you've ever
Nah,
heard
that
the
dude's
winds
ass.
of a
Doors already.
hurricane, that sounds like a freight train on the outside of a house. They're sitting in that room, and then they hear wind, something like sound. It was mighty. It was powerful. It probably sounded like a freight train. They said it was like a rushing wind. Luke wrote, wind is synonymous with God's presence. The word wind in Greek means pneuma, where we get breath from. It was God who made a man from a lump of clay, and then with pneuma, he breathed into him the breath of life. It was God working through Ezekiel in a vision who saw dry bones, which represents the state of Israel, and breathed into them life. It was God through the Holy Spirit that breathed into men to write the Holy Spirit. So we know that when we see wind, it represents God. It represents his breath. It represents his power and his presence. And it said they heard that sound. It was like a mighty wind. And then watch, suddenly something happened in that room. Man, this is powerful to me because right here in this text, it reminds us that the words of Jesus can be trusted. It was Christ who said to them, go into the city, stay there. In a few days, you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. And here comes the Holy Spirit rushing into that room from heaven. So we know